Could you just share maybe 3 things that PR agencies should not do?
I come from a generation that actually did all of the thinking with my own brain and from scratch.
This, I won't say a divide, but I think it's okay to acknowledge that there is friction at some level.
Rather than saying that we are against each other, I feel PR and journalists tend to be on parallel tracks, and very rarely do they intersect at some point. And that intersection needs to happen a lot more.
How does a new PR professional build relationship with a journalist?
We just had to come in, file, say, a specific number of stories, make sure we sit with the designers, edit them, and we are done for the day. And
That's
that
true.
vacuum needs to be filled, and the only way we can do it is if journalists and PR work together.
Today, we have Ruth D'Souza Prabhu, who's an independent journalist with over 22 years of experience. She's a freelancer who writes for multiple publications nationally and internationally, covering F&B, lifestyle, travel. And today, we have a fun workshop-style podcast. Hi, Ruth. Welcome to India PR Show. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Not only because it's the first episode of season 2, but in season 1 we did not have a voice from the journalist point of view, and we have that, and we're starting with that with you. So welcome to the India PR Show. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you, Nidhi. So happy to be here.
So Ruth, can we start from your journey in journalism? I know you've been there for 22 years and in different avatars in journalism, right from television to, media house and then freelancing. Just talk to us a bit about your journey in journalism.
Okay, so I am a mass comm graduate. I did my master's in Manipal and was immediately recruited into the television space. And I worked with ETV Kannada and was working on children's programming. So essentially, I was executive producer there, doing programs, ideating programs, working with directors, and actually seeing the shows go on floor and then finally on telecast as well. From there, I moved into the print world. There was a lovely paper called Vijay Times, which finally became Bangalore Mirror at one point. Was with the features section there, and we had a lovely set of feature publications that came out every day of the week, ending up with the Sunday special, which was called The Theme, which was 4 pages of a broadsheet dedicated to a single theme. And at the end of my, say, 3.5 years there, I was handling quality control for all of the publications that were coming out from the features section as well. So gave me a lovely broad idea into so many aspects of culture, books, magazines, food, science and tech, real estate, and all of that. I had to go freelance almost overnight. Shortly afterwards, I was working with a magazine. We were dealing with education and travel, 2 separate magazines. And that was soon after I had my daughter. And unfortunately, or fortunately for me, in the way things have been going, I got into the freelance space literally overnight. And journalism actually took a backseat at that point because no one was really, say around 16 years ago, no one was really giving stories to freelancers to write. It was all about working in-house with the publication. So I got into the field of content development with various corporate clients and with a lot of content mills that were there at that point. And what happened was I had to learn, for one of my clients, I had to learn about search engine optimization, which was still pretty new at that time. And what I did was to teach myself the concepts because I was just reading it online. I decided to start a blog, which around 15 years ago was still a new idea.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it on something that was close to my heart, which was just going out and eating at that time. So that's how my blog, bangaloresrestaurants.com, started. And I started writing about food, just the way I liked to write about it. And it just took on a life of its own. So while I did learn about search engine optimization, the blog took a life of its own. And when freelance journalism started opening up, food was one of the spaces that I found a lot of opportunities in, because I had a body of work and I had the journalism background as well, which has contributed today to me being pretty well known in the food and beverage space as a writer. And of course, the other opportunities came around with the other publications, Indian, international. So today, my career is a neat 50-50 split between content development for corporate clients and largely marketing communications and food and beverage writing. I'm an author of a book as well. And yeah, that's how it is right now.
So, Ruth, just for the benefit of all the PR industry, what what is your current, like, who do you write for currently, and which sectors do you cover?
So I write largely now for Mint Lounge. I also write for The Hindu, for Deccan Herald. I write for international publications like Nikkei Asia. I've had bylines in the New York Times, Al Jazeera, and say a couple of niche food publications or beverage publications like Good Beer Hunting, which is an international publication, and Eaton. Also some in travel, Fodder's Travel, Travel and Leisure in India, Condé Nast Traveler. When Nat Geo was around, still Nat Geo Traveler. So though I'm trying to crack the international one as well. So these are some of the publications I write for.
So largely in the F&B travel space
Yes.
currently.
Yes.
Okay. Ruth, I was very lucky to have you train my full team through your RDP workshops and tailored for the PR industry. And while there was so much for us to learn from there, I want to kind of spend a lot more time in today's podcast to talk about, this, I won't say a divide, but I think it's okay to acknowledge that there is friction at some level. And between PR and the journalism side of things, while there is so much spoken about it on LinkedIn, there was also an article in ET which spoke about it, and so much happening. So want to have this opportunity to talk to you from a journalist point of view, and more so not to pass on blame, but more from the lens of what is the issue that you see, and what do you think is a solution that you could give?
Happy to do it today.
Yeah. So, could you just, start with talking about maybe some problems that you face with the journalists, with the PR industry today?
Okay, I think, like you said, there is friction, and rather than saying that we are against each other, I feel PR and journalists tend to be on parallel tracks, and very rarely do they intersect at some point, and that intersection needs to happen a lot more. I feel from a journalist perspective, and I think that's something that comes out very often in conversations that happen about this friction, that there seems to be a lack of orientation with the PR industry, with possibly the new recruits who are coming in, on how to interact with journalists and what is needed from there. Some of the primary things that I see is a lot of PR folk tend to think that the onus of creating a pitch for a client lies with the journalist and not with them.
The pitch.
The pitch.
Okay.
When you are talking about your client to a journalist, asking them, are you working on stories that my client can fit in, does not do any service to your client. But if you can tell a journalist what it is that your client does that warrants such coverage, there's a possibility that we could consider working on a story or be more open to that thought. So I think that's one place that the idea of pitching belongs to the PR and not to the journalist by and large.
True.
Having said that, it doesn't mean the journalist can't come up with an idea, because there are a lot of times, especially when you're working on trend stories, where the journalist has an idea, and when they know a client or they know that a PR person handles a particular client that fits in, we'll obviously come to that person. But to bring that client onto our radar, I feel PR need to be a little more, go beyond simply saying, this is my client, this is what they do. What is the USP of what they do hardly ever comes out in majority of the cases. I wouldn't blanket everyone.
For everybody, yeah. No, because I think you are one of those journalists that have also on LinkedIn spoken very openly about some great pitches that came in to, and how a great pitch made your life easy to kind of get you a story and all of that, right? Could you just share maybe 3 things that PR agencies should not do? Like 3 things that come to your mind that is A complete no-no.
Um, Getting the name of the journalist wrong in your introductory mail, that's a complete no-no. Happens a lot.
Absolutely not. You can't
Happens
do
a
that.
lot, especially with me. I always say my name is like just 4 letters. It's very hard to get that wrong. Also, the BCC mails don't really work because you are essentially shooting in the dark, and it goes out to multiple people, and you never know what's going to hit. Targeted pitches for a publication. So actually, that would be my second one. A targeted pitch to the journalist by understanding what that journalist can do and what that publication can do. That helps. So I think I'd have to flip that around and say that the thing you shouldn't do is send a mass mail,
email, yeah.
mass mail out. So get the name of the journalist right. Don't send out a mass mail, and also please don't follow up every 5 minutes. Like there's the concept of send the email, send a WhatsApp, and then call all within a space of half an hour. And most of the time, the pitch is just read out on the phone. Yeah. So don't do these three things.
On I totally agree. I think a lot of agencies now are constantly working on not sending out mass emails, because also from a PR industry point of view, we are trying to get the news out to so many, like to so many publications, because you never know, the beats also for journalists keeps changing. So we are trying to reach out to many at one go. But I think the PR industry right now is going through that change where they are constantly saying no mass emails, do not call. But I think one thing that we face also is the no response from journalists. Sometimes I know some journalists, and we love sending them emails because they're very clear that they will respond to the email saying, yes, I can take it forward, no, doesn't interest me, or maybe after a month I will come back to you. But I think the scene zoning problem is what a lot of PR folks feel, that we don't even know if that has reached you, or have you got it, has the mail gone to spam. So for the lot of the industry folks, it's about constantly reaching out to just know if you've got it, right? So I just feel, is there anything on that you want to talk about? From I know you respond. So
No, I'm also been guilty of not responding many times, and I totally get your pain, because as a freelance journalist, I send out a lot of pitches to editors, and I completely get the scene zone kind of thing happens to me all the time. So I understand the pain, which is why I try and take the trouble to actually respond to every mail that comes in, but it's not always possible because one, you'll have to understand what the working scene for the journalist is like. What tends to happen is a lot of people don't know production timings when it comes
Right.
to a publication. So generally, if you have a feature publication that comes out on a Saturday, pages start closing from a Wednesday onwards, which means journalists are just not looking at their mail because they're so focused on editing stories, putting photos together, getting the design done, fact checking, cross checking. All of these things happen. So tendency to see a mail from, say, a Wednesday to a Saturday when it comes to, say, lifestyle publications is not going to happen. You have better chances of it getting you a response, possibly if you send it on a Saturday afternoon or on a Monday morning, depending on when the edit meets happen, because that's when all the stories are just pulled together and discussed. Having said that, having a subject line that really, really attracts a journalist, because you have to understand that whereas your one agency is possibly sending 5 mails from 5 different clients just from your agency, that journalist email ID is possibly with half the country right now. And on an average, me as a freelance journalist on average get around 20 to 25 mails a day. And I'm just freelance.
And also, I was
so now-
talking to another journalist who says the typical 100 emails a day.
A day.
So you're saying that, that not responding to 100 emails, responding to 100 emails is not possible. Of course, yeah.
It's not, but the chances of getting a response to a well-placed subject line and a pitch is much more easier. And this comes from a place where I tell you, as a journalist pitching to an editor, I need to grab their attention, and that's what PR needs to do. So go back to the idea of PR need to think a lot more like journalists, put themselves in the journalist's shoes and think, would this be interesting? Would they want to open it? Is it relevant to them? That really helps. I can tell you that I get, and I've told you this at the workshop as well, I get emails about open heart surgeries. And that's also because I
That's
wrote.
not your beat.
It's not my beat
ever.
at all. Not. but I did write health stories maybe around 12 years ago, but I've never written on a surgery. So it happened just because my name ended up on a mailing list for health stories. So the assumption is that an open heart surgery is going to work for me. That's never going to get a response for me. It's also a waste of effort for the PR and a waste of a possible opportunity, for like if you tell me there is a new diet that comes in food related, possibly to a, improving the health of, say, a cancer patient, I might actually open that and read. Again, this was just off the top of my head. I'm not giving you a hard and fast example. But you need to be relevant to the beat. And only then possibly, it's also not humanly possible, like you said, to do 100 mails and respond to each of them saying yes, no, yes, no. And a lot of PR have also come back saying, why no? And I feel that is something you need to understand. There are a lot of reasons why no, and we could discuss that at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think, this is the right segue into your the workshop that we've had. And, it was very interesting because a lot of my team members that are there were all, people who've been in the industry for, say, anything between 1 year to, say, a 5 year. They're rather newer people who've come into the workforce. They would typically come under the Gen Z category. And, if you see the way they work, the way they think is very different from others. They are not scared to ask questions. They will kind of do that. And your workshop definitely helped. And I think, and I can speak for the industry and know there is so much that the new leaders are doing so that the younger force doesn't do this mistake of, like, mass emailing, calling the journalists who don't even cover the beat. So there's a lot of emphasis being given on having your lists, which are very targeted, individual emails, all of that is happening. But having said all of this, could you, coming back to the RDP workshops, I tend to drift. So for RDP workshops, if you have to just tell us in a few lines, what can a PR agency benefit from it?
So the reason I started RDP workshops is a lot of us journalists have always gone online, ranted about PR interactions. I know I have done it. I've done it on Instagram. I have lately started using LinkedIn. But I've always believed there's no point in simply ranting because it doesn't change anything. So from a journalist perspective, having worked with PR agencies and with PR professionals, independent agencies, boutique, big, large, small, all of them, I know what works and what doesn't work. And I just thought it's a nice bridge to be able to tell PR folk, hey, we both can benefit from this. I mean, I have an ulterior motive. I want great stories. I want great bylines. And there have been a lot of PR folks who have given me excellent story ideas that have come, into cover stories, into international publications. And who doesn't want that? It's a win-win for everybody. And that's why I designed the workshop the way it is. The primary idea being to try and help the PR person think like a journalist. It's only when you do that will you be able to time your pitch correctly, give them the resources, give journalists the resources that possibly could go in it, and even prep your own client to answer questions. I feel a lot of, there is also a disconnect between PR and their clients because at the end of the day, a lot of PR are just trying to deliver for their clients.
I think alignment with the client is not easy.
It's not.
But I think this is very, very important because sometimes I think the pressure comes right from there. When the clients put the pressure on PR people, the PR people put the pressure back here, and then obviously it's something that doesn't lead to anything. I think at the beginning, alignment with clients is very, very important.
I think that's necessary. So being able to think like a journalist is one of the things that I hope to achieve with this workshop. And it is without any malice to any side of the table. Journalists do make equal number of mistakes. There are a lot of times we have said that, a story will end up as a feature, but a quote may get dropped out from the very PR who suggested the story idea. And there can be 100 reasons why that has happened. And many times a lot of things are not in our control as well. At the editorial table, there's a lot that's not in our control. I think the workshop will also help people understand how to pitch clients. So a lot of times what I have seen is that a PR agency will try and sell the same spiel that a company expects them to sell, but doesn't go beyond it. It's not always about just saying, here's a new restaurant that's launched, or my client is a restaurateur who's opened the 10th restaurant. those are not pitches. No publication is going to take an interview related to that.
Yeah.
But if you can say, what is the significance of that 10th restaurant opening? What is the secret sauce behind that? That could possibly spin out into something else. Going beyond the obvious is where media is at right now.
Yeah.
See, there are a lot of publications that are always going to do your listicles and launches and all of that. They always end up getting a very tiny space. That
Yeah.
you have sorted. But if you want a longer lasting, say, like, a complete feature interview, a standalone interview, something like that, it has to go beyond
Yeah.
the obvious.
I think your workshop also, the part where we did brainstorming, where we told you what campaign we are thinking of, and then you telling, okay, think like a journalist, think of trends, think of this. I was actually sitting talking to another journalist friend of mine, and your brain as a journalist is always thinking of stories. What is the angle? What is the insight? What is it that we can do? So I think that is something that your workshop does help, is this story angle. I think that is something that it really helped us, is thinking like a journalist. Um, One bit of the thing that I have seen, which is also something that we all struggle with, is relationships and friendships, right? Because if you see that the friendships that were formed very early on in the time when there used to be press conferences, a lot of physical meeting used to happen. So there were a lot of these relationships were formed then. But in today's digital world, where there's not too many opportunities where you could get to meet a journalist, how does a new PR professional build relationship with a journalist?
Okay, that is a very tricky one because, yeah, I know I come from that era where, those meetings used to happen. There were neutral events where PR and journalists could get together. Today, it's largely at award ceremonies where PR and journalists get together. But I would honestly say it begins with the small things. For example, again, I go back to please get my name right when you're mailing me. One habit I have tried to form with as many PR people who get in touch with me is to please send me updated client lists, and not on WhatsApp, on email, because generally when you're ideating a story and you need to know where people are or whom I can get in touch with, it's so much easier to run an email search to know whether you have enough of contacts to pull off a story. So that would be a great starting point for me. Send me your client list with maybe just a 2-3 line USP of that client, and possibly if you have a story idea related to it, nothing like it. Being able to give me a great pitch, something that I can read from beginning to end. Believe me, journalists do file that at the back of their minds, if nowhere else, that if a PR person could handle a pitch so well, they for sure will be able to give me great responses from their clients. So that first impression pitch, just like how you'd make it with any new company and a new boss, you're trying to make that first impression. Those first impressions go a long way. It just has moved from being person to person now to the digital space, which for the newer generation I don't think is difficult. Possibly the skill of writing is something that needs to improve. So I would say that would be the next possible way. And again, in some ways, possibly just reading what the journalist writes about and just commenting on it. Like nowadays, journalists also do it. We put up our stories online. And I'm not saying that this is just, to fan an ego or something like that, but everyone looks for appreciation and everyone looks for validation of some sort. It also tells a journalist that you're reading stories within the beat. So tomorrow when you do send me a pitch, I know that you're in a beat. I have interacted with you on social media. It's just the medium of interaction has changed. So I feel that's a great starting point. And
it's a good starting point, because I see so many journalists now, and I appreciate those little gestures from the side of PR always getting bashed, to a nice message from a journalist on LinkedIn saying, thank you so much for giving credits to the agency that has helped put this together. I think that would be both ways.
Absolutely.
I think that is, and I think I see that happening. I see that now a lot more of social media shout outs are happening both ways. But having said this, I think it's still a long way to go to fix this. Something that was very interesting, I was talking to Mahesh, who's just joined Deccan Herald, and he said something very interesting. He said, Nidhi, if the PR teams could do an internship
in media houses, say for a week, just to understand newsroom, how it works, how we start with a story in the day, and by the end of it completely changes and how the timeline works. And I feel that one way to do it is if the younger teams who are joining both the journalism side and the PR side could do internships across PR agencies and journalist side, can exchange, have like a little bit of an exchange program. It will help in a big way to understand what pressures are on both sides.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful idea. And if we can facilitate that,
Yeah.
I'd be the happiest.
I am going to
be able-
definitely see if we can send Ebony and Ivory team to one of
Yeah.
any media house. Maybe I'll talk to them and see, because this would be really eye opening for us, right?
Yeah.
To understand what happens in a newsroom kind of a setup. So, so Ruth, wanted to also get your thoughts on this whole. The journalism industry is also changing so much, right? From the time that where print editions was such a big thing to now you can see the whole digital first platforms that are coming in, which work as a media content center. They work differently, and they are able to get a lot more visibility, or not more, but maybe same, or like for example, very targeted audience for theirs. For example, if you see Bengaluru served to so many platforms which are digital first, right? So how do you see that change happening, and how does that impact you?
Okay,
as
so
a-
I'm one of those dinosaurs who started off with the hardcore, you know, printing out your paper and actually editing by hand and then going back to the computer and doing your edits back there. So I've seen this transition happen from newspapers being old school to the digital first, and then now media houses being completely digital. And I get the significance of that in today's fast-paced world. Everything is consumed on a phone. And I think newspapers came into that game very, very late and are still picking up as far as the digital space is concerned. Though they have done some great, creating apps and having WhatsApp communities and being able to update people. I think it's just increased the pressure on journalists, because if you go back into the newsroom, I'm no longer in the newsroom, but I do speak to a lot of people who are there. So journalists initially would, back in my time when I was doing this, say 20 years ago, we just had to come in, file, say, a specific number of stories, make sure we sit with the designers, edit them, and we are done for the day. But today, journalists have to file those 2-3 stories, make sure that they are in the digital space as well, and also make sure that the digital space has plenty more stories beyond what has gone into print.
Yeah.
And especially with publications now having your premium section, which is behind a paywall, which means the stories have to be much more in-depth, versus your regular stories that can be given out for free as teasers. So there's a lot of pressure that's built up on journalists.
Yeah.
Having said that, it also means that there's a need for a lot of great stories.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
true.
vacuum needs to be filled, and the only way we can do it is if journalists and PR work together in a much more harmonious way,
Yeah.
possibly. And that's what we need to work towards.
Well, I think there's so much said around the print declining, but the trust factor for a print story is so high. Today, if you would trust a print article in a Mint or any other publication way more than a reel that you see, right? Because then there's a perception that this may be bought, but you still don't have a feeling that this editorial piece is kind of bought. So I think in the world of AI, where the trust factor is diminishing so much, I feel that there's going to be a lot more revival of traditional media that's going to come up. What do you think about that?
I do agree with you. What I have felt is when it comes to publications, yes, print definitely has got that credibility, primarily because there's a very clear division between advertorial and advertorial being paid visibility versus just a story that is there. So that has always been to the benefit of print. Having said that, I have also always turned to social media and to social media houses, which do a lot of this stuff simply because they bring awareness so much faster than what print can do.
Yeah.
So in the long-term game, I think they overlap to a certain, we need both of them.
Yeah.
Building the credibility of, say, a social media house or an influencer is something that needs to be possibly worked on. But there are a lot of them who are very clear about how they work and what they do. And so I just hope that it matters.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's again, you know, the whole digital first is growing, but I think with this the AI complexity or the AI, you know, boon happening in a way that's also going to further change a lot. So I want to talk to you about, because now it's just a fact that we use AI in everything that we do. Now the only difference is the prompts that are happening. Are Do you get a lot of pitch which you can kind of just very clearly see is not being thought through and just AI written which has no depth? Or, you know, what is your take on a lot of that happening, AI being used for content?
Okay, so I'm one of those, possibly it may not go down well with others. I'm someone who always has been an advocate of using AI to improve your skills. I think of it as a tool. A lot of people disagree with the idea. And I think where it stops becoming a tool is when you completely use everything that is AI and don't bring your personality to it at all.
Yeah.
Should you use AI to help refine your pitch? Definitely use it. You can use it as a sounding board. I just see it as a much faster way to be able to ideate. Say, for example, you have a Japanese restaurant that's launching. Bangalore has got what? Like, we
Many
just had a
now.
reel come out saying that, we should start renaming places in Bangalore to Japanese names as well. That's the number of Japanese restaurants that come in. But if I were to put in a prompt into, say, a chat GPT, which is just even the free version of it, and say, again, like you said, it depends on the prompt engineering part of it. There's a Japanese restaurant that's launched in Bangalore. This is one of 50 other places that's doing this. Can you give me 5 ways in which I can approach this differently? And it will give you 5 different ways because it trolls the entire internet to a certain extent and gives you those ideas. But again, I would say you would have to do your independent research. You will have to visit restaurants. You will have to know what's happening in the Japanese space to be able to put those ideas into context. And possibly you will get something new for your client. Using it as a sounding board, definitely yes. Copy pasting those and sending it to the journalist is not going to work. And where it doesn't work is, and a lot of people have not understood this, is that when you send a pitch to a journalist will like it and come back to you, and then you don't have an answer to why did you come up with that idea? How can your client be a part of it? And I can give you an example for that.
Please.
Not related to Japanese restaurants, but I got this amazing pitch on the subject line being flavor hacking is the new way of creating menus. And I instantly opened that up because just the thought was so interesting and the pitch was beautifully framed. But when I asked for how the client could feature in that story, what is the client doing for it, the responses were great, which came back, but it did not match flavor hacking at all. What it essentially did was talk about textures and techniques, which is a done and dusted story in the industry. So whereas the approach to it was great in terms of the subject line, it didn't pan out into a great story. But it made me open that email.
But that's actually false information because AI is making mistakes.
Absolutely.
Now again, AI has created such an interesting pitch, but there's no depth to it, and that kind of would have spoiled, in a way, made you question future pitches coming from the PR.
It did, but I am one of those who likes to give a little benefit of doubt. I know a lot of people are using AI, and while I don't have an issue with it, I know I can poke holes in the pitch, and it's up to the PR person to be able to validate what they are sending to. Can my client fit into what I am sending to the journalist? That has to be the thought process before just sending out an AI-generated pitch. I feel AI has the potential to be a great sounding board as long as you know to use it well and ethically.
Right. Yeah. I think ethically and knowing how to use is the key word, because I think I worry about this, honestly, sometimes, that people are just getting so used to it that I don't know how much of they are going to use their own mind after a certain point of time, right? Because we are still the first users of this. It is a little, scary when, what if we stop using our minds or think originally? So that kind of is a little bit of, and I can see so much of AI penetrating into everything we do. I can see even internally, or even if when I talk to the other PR industry folks, there is the content that is being created is just so quick but without depth now. So that is going to be something that we as an industry will have to watch out for.
So I agree with you there. And what I would say is, I think it's easier for me to say that AI is a tool because I come from a generation that actually did all of the thinking with my own brain and from scratch. I have had ideas shot down in an edit meet. I have had editors throw papers at my face, and I've been through that kind of a journalism scenario. Whereas the newer generations haven't been through that. So AI possibly can be a tool only for those who have done it the hard way and know how to work on the prompt engineering part, because you know the questions to ask, you know how to poke a hole in a pitch.
Yeah.
But for the newer generation, possibly going straight for a pitch to AI may not really work if you haven't thought of a pitch on your own and got it approved.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a balance. Again, that would come in orientation and having to learn to think like a journalist, which
I think this is
needs to
also
be-
the time that RDP workshops should have an AI angle to it, which we spoke about.
Yeah.
So hoping that you would, create that. Ruth, while we are talking about, such a sensitive topic, I want to, ask you some examples where, a PR team has been absolutely wrong. And if you can give examples so that, for the benefit of the larger industry, if you could give us just maybe one example that you feel was so shocking to you or something that happened.
Okay, and I think I'm possibly going back to the same point about getting my name right. So there is another journalist with the same name with a publication, and it's actually become a joke between the two of us that we field emails and phone calls for each other. And I think that one is quite a hard one. In fact, once I even got a phone call, and this was out of the blue, and the PR person just said, "Hey Ruth, I've got the person on the line, just give me a second." Suddenly I was on a conference call with somebody I didn't know, and I'm frantically looking through my calendar wondering, did I forget to schedule an interview and forget about it completely? And then I had no choice, and I didn't want to embarrass anyone, but I had no choice but to ask on the call, is this an interview I scheduled? And I could hear the poor PR person just go, "Oh my God, I called the wrong Ruth." And it is, and while I get it can happen, when you have the same name and the way it's stored on your phone and stuff like that. I really feel sometimes a double check, especially once you know that there are two people with the same name in the industry, you need to check whom you're calling and whom you're emailing.
Right.
So,
right.
and that's been you can say it's a pet peeve because it's happened to me in multiple ways and sometimes in much more embarrassing ways than simply just a call like this. I've had PR people slam the phone on my face when they realize they're talking to the wrong Ruth because they just don't know how to deal with the fact that they made a mistake. And not once, the same person called me 3 times, 3 different names, and then slammed the phone on my face 3 times. So, yeah.
I don't know what to say to that. That's okay. So, Ruth, one example where when you think about it, you could have done better with your interaction with a PR person.
I can give you a very recent example. So I get a lot of invitations for fam trips. And normally what just happens is the fam trip invitation comes and there's a list of deliverables, which again I have a problem with because deliverables are for social media influencers and not for journalists. And also it is assumed that because you're a freelancer and do write for multiple publications, you can be milked for 5 to 6 stories, which is the so-called deliverable when these mails come. Now I get a lot of them and my blanket answer to all of them is that I cannot place such a story. It does not work for me unless you are able to do this trip without a confirmed story in hand, which is an issue by itself. But I've become so used to answering it this way with the fam trip. When recently one came up, it was again to a beautiful star hotel place, and it's a very well-covered space. So I just wrote back saying, thank you for this, but it's already a well-covered space, so I don't think I can do anything. And the PR representative said, can I just give you a call? I said, why not? Possibly, someone's interested in giving me a call, we'll do it. And the way she presented the client saying that I do understand that you cannot put my client in a standalone story. They've been around a long time, but I can curate an itinerary for you which places them in great context, but also gives you how they are relevant in that ecosystem. And what she explained to me was fabulous. I would have loved it if it was in an email, because I relate to that much better. But I felt really bad for having dismissed that, with my usual blanket answer, without possibly giving it the benefit of doubt and saying, okay, let's at least take the conversation forward. And now I'm wondering whether I possibly missed out on such interactions just with that blanket answer. But yeah, that would be one example that I'd come across.
So Ruth, we have a fun rapid fire for you. Quick 4 questions. The shorter you can keep, the better. A pitch subject line you could not ignore.
Flavor hacking is the new way to make a menu.
A story you loved writing.
Aging pickles of India.
One thing every PR professional should know.
That even if a story is going forward, till it's actually finished the editorial round, there is no guarantee that your client will be featured or the quote as it is will be featured. Changes can happen.
One thing journalists should never forget.
To be polite. End of the day, everyone's doing their job. Our part of the world is quite frustrating, but so is the other part. We were newcomers at one time. We wanted people to be polite. I think we just need to be a little more polite.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Ruth. It was a fun chat talking about this because, this is something that not everybody is comfortable talking about. So I think we are just in the beginning of a change. And thank you for collaborating with us on, some early conversations around this.
My
Thank you.
absolute pleasure. This was lovely.